The moment I saw my daughter's vacation photos posted online while I lay in a hospital bed fighting for my life is something I'll never forget. My name is Margaret Sullivan, and at 70, I never imagined that a sudden pneumonia would reveal which of my children truly deserved to inherit the home that had been in our family for 3 generations. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from, and if this story resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's video will show you exactly how to recognize who truly deserves your loyalty when illness forces those around you to reveal their genuine priorities. This photograph was taken just 6 months ago, my 70th birthday celebration in the garden of our Victorian home. My daughter Jennifer stands to my left, my son Michael and his wife Sophia to my right, all of us smiling. I thought we were a loving family who would support each other through any crisis. I was wrong. I was raised in a small coastal town where my grandmother ran the local library. "Always pay attention to what people do when no one is watching, Maggie," she would tell me. Actions during crisis reveal true character more than words during celebrations ever could. Her wisdom saved my legacy decades later. After my husband Robert passed away, Jennifer began visiting more frequently. What initially seemed like caring attention gradually revealed itself as something more calculated. Her questions about the house deed became increasingly pointed, her suggestions about simplifying my affairs more persistent. "Mom, have you considered selling this big old house?" she would ask casually. "At your age, maintaining all this space is unnecessary." Each suggestion seemed reasonable alone, but together they formed a pattern of trying to liquidate the family home I had no intention of leaving. My first concrete suspicion came when I discovered Jennifer had been photographing documents in my home office. I noticed this accidentally while checking my security app. Timestamps showing movement in my office when I'd been out running errands. When questioned, she dismissed it as just helping organize your important papers. But her expression told a different story. Michael and Sophia lived 3 hours away, their demanding medical careers limiting their visits to once a month. Unlike Jennifer's increasingly frequent appearances, their visits remained consistent, arriving with groceries, helping with home maintenance, and never discussing my finances or suggesting I sell my home. Then came the pneumonia, sudden and severe enough to require hospitalization. The illness struck with little warning, progressing from what seemed like a minor cold to dangerous respiratory distress within 48 hours. By the time the ambulance arrived, I could barely breathe. Michael was first to be notified as my primary emergency contact. Despite being in the middle of his shift as a trauma surgeon, he arranged coverage and drove immediately to the hospital. Sophia followed that evening after arranging time off from her nursing position. "We'll take shifts staying with you," Michael promised. "I've already contacted Jennifer. She should be here by morning." But morning came without Jennifer's arrival. When Michael called to check, her phone went to voicemail without ringing. By afternoon, with no word from my daughter, concern began to evolve into alarm. "I've tried reaching her friends," Sophia reported. "No one has heard from her. Her neighbor said her car isn't in the driveway, but she didn't mention any planned trips. My condition was serious enough that doctors were discussing possible transfer to intensive care if the antibiotics didn't begin working soon." The absence of my daughter during this critical time created a confusion I struggled to process through the fever and medication haze. When Michael had to return for an emergency, surgery he couldn't reschedule, Sophia stayed behind. "I'll be back the moment my shift ends," he assured me. Sophia could have returned home with Michael. After all, I was receiving medical care, and she had her own responsibilities. Instead, she settled into the uncomfortable visitor chair beside my bed, somehow maintaining cheerful conversation despite having been awake for nearly 36 hours. "You don't need to stay," I told her, recognizing her exhaustion. "I'm not going anywhere," she replied with simple determination. No one should be alone in the hospital, especially family. Throughout that night, as my fever spiked and breathing became labored, Sophia advocated with night staff for additional interventions, helped reposition me for better lung expansion, and applied cool compresses to my forehead. When morning came, and my temperature finally broke, the attending physician credited her vigilant overnight care with preventing a likely transfer to intensive care. By the third day, Jennifer still hadn't returned any calls. Michael had filed a missing person report, concerned that something might have happened to prevent her from responding during a family emergency. That afternoon, as my condition improved, enough to be moved from acute care to a regular room, Sophia's phone chimed with a social media notification. Her expression shifted as she looked at the screen. "Jennifer's not missing," she said quietly, turning the phone toward me. The screen showed a photo posted 30 minutes earlier. My daughter smiling on a beach, cocktail in hand, with a location, tag showing a popular resort in Cancun. The caption read, "Sometimes you just need to escape. Best impulse decision ever. No regrets. Beach life." The timestamp confirmed she had flown to Mexico the same day I had been hospitalized, likely already. At the airport when the calls about my condition began, she had chosen an impromptu vacation over responding to an emergency that might have claimed her mother's life. As this reality sank in, my room phone rang. The hospital administrator was calling to discuss discharge planning for the following Terso. "We'll need to confirm your home situation and what support you'll have available," she explained. Michael, who had returned from his shift, immediately began sketching out a schedule. "I can take 3 days of family leave and Sophia has arranged a week. Between us and home health visits, we should be able to cover the first 10 days. I can move into the guest room at your house while you recover," Sophia offered. "That way someone will be there overnight when breathing problems are most likely to recur?" Their immediate practical response contrasted sharply with Jennifer's absence. As I watched them coordinate care details, I remembered finding Jennifer's real estate search history on my computer several months earlier. She had been researching property values in my neighborhood and contact information for estate liquidators. Now, with more clarity than the fever had allowed in previous days, I asked Sophia for my purse. From it, I removed a business card I had been carrying for nearly a year without acting upon it. "Would you call Mr. Harrington for me?" I asked, handing her the card for my attorney. "I'd like him to visit tomorrow before discharge. There are some changes I need to make to my will and property arrangements." Jennifer stared at me across the living room, her vacation tan contrasting sharply with the paleness of shock on her face. "You did what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The papers from my attorney lay on the coffee table between us. Evidence of decisions made during her conspicuous absence. "I've made changes to my will and established a trust for the house," I repeated calmly. "The family home will remain in the family, but not in the way you anticipated." Jennifer had returned from Mexico 5 days after my hospital discharge, arriving at my door with a small gift bag containing resort souvenirs and excuses about her phone not working internationally. She hadn't called ahead, perhaps hoping to find me alone rather than surrounded by the support team that had been managing my recovery. "I brought you something," she'd said brightly, as if a refrigerator magnet could compensate for her absence during a medical emergency. "And I can stay a few days to help you recover. You must have been so worried when you couldn't reach me." The casual reframing, suggesting I had been trying to reach her rather than the reverse, revealed a talent for narrative manipulation I hadn't fully appreciated until now. In her version, she was the thoughtful daughter bringing gifts, not the absent one who had prioritized beaches over a potentially dying parent. Michael had witnessed her arrival from the kitchen where he was preparing my medications. The look that passed between my children contained years of unspoken assessment. His recognition of patterns repeated, her realization that this time might be different. "Mom's been well cared for," he said simply, neither accusatory nor welcoming. "Sophia's been staying in the guest room since discharge, and we've had a home health nurse visiting daily." Jennifer's expression flickered with something unreadable before settling into practiced concern. That's wonderful, but I'm here now. You two should get back to your lives. I know how demanding your schedules are. I can take over Mom's care. The immediate attempt to remove Michael and Sophia from the situation struck me as telling. Her first priority wasn't asking about my condition, but establishing exclusive access. When Michael explained he had already arranged coverage for his shifts through the weekend, her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. After settling in, Jennifer had discovered my attorney's visit wasn't merely coincidental timing, leading to our current confrontation. I had anticipated her reaction, preparing myself for the performance of hurt feelings and indignation that would inevitably follow. I don't understand, she continued, her voice modulating into wounded disbelief. I've always been the one who visited most frequently, who helped you manage the house, and now you're telling me you've put the property in trust for Michael and Sophia? Not exactly, I clarified. I've established a living trust that allows me to remain in the home for my lifetime. After my passing, the house transfers to a family trust that benefits my grandchildren's education, with Michael and Sophia as trustees. The arrangement ensures the property remains in the family for generations rather than being sold. This carefully structured arrangement had been designed with my attorney specifically to preserve the property's legacy, while preventing what we both recognized as Jennifer's likely intentions: selling the valuable historic home immediately, upon inheritance. But what about me? The naked self-interest in the question hung in the air between us. You'll receive a financial inheritance, I explained, equal to 1/3 the appraised value of the home. But the property itself will remain intact through the trust. The flicker of calculation across her features confirmed what I had suspected. The inheritance itself wasn't her primary concern, but rather the control over the property and its potential sale value. The arrangement I had established would provide her fair financial benefit while removing her ability to liquidate a family legacy that was never hers alone to dispose of. This isn't fair, she said, abandoning pretense entirely. I'm your daughter. I should have equal say in what happens to the house. Equal say with whom? I asked carefully. Your brother hasn't expressed any interest in selling the property. In fact, he's consistently supported maintaining it as a family home. That's because he doesn't need the money like I do, she countered, revealing more than perhaps intended. His surgeon's salary and Sophia's nursing career give them financial security I don't have. This appeal to financial need might have been more convincing had I not accessed her bank records as part of my estate planning process. Her comfortable teaching position, supplemented by her husband's engineering income, provided household earnings well above the national average. Their frequent luxury vacations and recently purchased vacation cottage suggested financial priorities, rather than necessities. If immediate financial need is your concern, that could have been addressed directly, I noted. You never mentioned needing assistance, only repeatedly suggesting I sell this house, which has been in our family for 3 generations. The conversation was interrupted by Sophia's arrival from the pharmacy with my prescription refills. Her presence changed the dynamic immediately. Jennifer straightened in her chair, smile returning with practiced ease. Sophia, I was just telling Mom how grateful I am that you've been helping while I was away. Such terrible timing for my phone to stop working during my trip. The performance was flawless, warm, appreciative, with just the right hint of apologetic acknowledgement. Anyone witnessing only this moment might believe the narrative of unfortunate coincidence rather than deliberate choice. Sophia's response was gracious but measured. Family takes care of family, she said simply. Michael and I were grateful to be able to help. The calculated neutrality of her statement, neither accepting Jennifer's framing nor challenging it directly, reflected emotional intelligence I had come to deeply respect during the past difficult week. She placed the medications on the side table and quietly excused herself to prepare lunch, giving us privacy to continue our discussion. Once alone again, Jennifer's demeanor shifted back to aggrieved entitlement. I don't understand why one missed. Visit during a brief illness has led to such dramatic changes, she said. It feels like I'm being punished disproportionately. This isn't about punishment, I replied, maintaining the calm I had practiced with my attorney in anticipation of this conversation. It's about recognizing patterns of behavior and making decisions accordingly. Your absence during my hospitalization was simply the final confirmation of priorities I've observed developing over the past 2 years. I reached for the folder my attorney had provided and removed several documents, including printouts of emails Jennifer had apparently believed were deleted and records of 3 separate consultations with real estate agents specializing in historic properties, all occurring within weeks of asking about the status of my will. You've been planning the sale of this house while I'm still living in it, I stated without accusation, simply presenting facts. Researching market values, consulting with estate liquidators about the antiques, and most tellingly, making inquiries about how quickly probate could be completed in the event of sudden changes in an elderly parent's condition. The color drained from her tanned face as she realized the extent of information I had gathered. The dated consultations proved this wasn't a recent consideration, but a calculated plan developed over months. Those were just informational consultations, she stammered. Planning for eventualities, nothing more. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But they reveal priorities and intentions that influenced my estate decisions. The house will remain in the family as it has for generations. Your financial inheritance remains substantial, but the property decisions will be managed by those who have demonstrated commitment to family legacy over immediate financial gain. The medication bottle rolled across the hardwood floor, stopping at Sophia's feet as she entered the kitchen. I watched her pick it up, her nurse's training immediately drawing her attention to the label. The puzzled expression that crossed her face confirmed something was wrong before she even spoke. Margaret, this prescription. She hesitated, examining the orange bottle more carefully. This isn't the antibiotic Dr. Kennedy prescribed. This is a sedative, and it's not from our pharmacy. 2 days had passed since my confrontation with Jennifer about the changed will. She had insisted on staying despite the obvious tension, claiming concern for my recovery while spending most of her time on her laptop in the guest room that Sophia had vacated to give her space. Her behavior had been oddly solicitous, insisting on preparing my medication and meals despite Sophia's continued presence during the day and Michael's evening visits after his hospital shifts. I looked at the bottle in Sophia's hand, recognizing it as the evening medication Jennifer had given me the previous night. That's what Jennifer gave me for my pneumonia, I said. She said it was a new prescription the doctor had called in. Sophia's medical training made her response immediate and decisive. This is completely wrong. It's a powerful sedative normally, prescribed for severe insomnia or pre-surgical anxiety. Taking this instead of your antibiotic would have been extremely dangerous in your weakened condition. Her voice remained calm, but I could see her mind working through implications too, disturbing to voice immediately. Let me see your other medications, she requested, moving to the kitchen counter where my morning pills had been arranged in a small cup, supposedly by Jennifer before she left for a quick errand. Sophia examined each one carefully, her expression growing increasingly concerned. These aren't right either. This white tablet isn't your heart medication, it's something else entirely. She pulled out her phone and used a medical identification app to confirm her suspicions. It's a blood pressure medication you haven't been prescribed. Taking this when you don't need it could have caused dangerous drops in your blood pressure. The systematic replacement of my medications couldn't be accidental. A chill ran through me as I realized what might have happened had Sophia not noticed the discrepancy. Progressive weakening, potential falls, perhaps even symptoms that might mimic declining health in an elderly woman recently hospitalized with pneumonia. Where did these come from? Sophia asked, already gathering the incorrect medications into a separate container, her medical training automatically preserving what might become evidence. Jennifer has been insisting on handling my medication since she arrived, I explained. She said it would be easier for me to rest if she managed the schedule. Sophia's phone call to Michael was brief and clinical, explaining the situation without emotional speculation, but with enough medical detail to communicate the seriousness. Within 30 minutes, he arrived with a hospital colleague who specialized in geriatric medicine. They documented the medications, compared them with my actual prescriptions, and discussed potential effects with a gravity that confirmed my worst suspicions. These substitutions could have created symptoms of confusion, weakness, and potentially falls serious enough to require extended care, the geriatric specialist explained. In a patient your age recovering from pneumonia, the combined effect could have justified concerns about your ability to live independently. The deliberate architecture of the plan became clear. Not an attempt at immediate harm, but a calculated effort to create conditions that would support Jennifer's narrative about my inability to maintain independent living in the family home. Had it succeeded, her previous suggestions about simplifying my affairs would have appeared prescient rather than predatory. As this realization settled over the room, the front door opened. Jennifer returned from her errands, stopping abruptly when she saw the gathering in the kitchen and the line of medication bottles arranged on the counter. Her expression shifted rapidly: surprise, calculation, and finally a practiced concern. "What's happening?" she asked, setting down her shopping bags. "Is something wrong with Mom's medications?" Michael, whose professional demeanor had always provided emotional containment during crisis, responded with uncharacteristic directness. "Yes, there is. These aren't her prescribed medications. They're entirely different drugs that could have created serious health complications." Jennifer's response came too quickly, too rehearsed. "That's alarming. There must have been a terrible pharmacy mistake. I'll call them immediately." "That would be difficult," Sophia interjected quietly, "since some of these medications aren't from Mom's pharmacy at all. The prescription labels show they're from 3 different pharmacies across 2 counties. The calculated preparation this indicated, collecting various medications from scattered locations to avoid patterns that might trigger pharmacy safety protocols, revealed premeditation impossible to dismiss as misunderstanding or mistake." Jennifer's expression hardened as she recognized the futility of continued denial. "You have no idea of the pressure I'm under," she said, abandoning the concerned daughter persona entirely. "David's business is failing. We're underwater on both mortgages, and meanwhile, this house sits here with equity that could solve everything." The naked calculation in her voice, assessing my home primarily as a financial asset to extract, confirmed the decision I had made in the hospital had been not just justified, but perhaps urgently necessary. "So your solution was to make me appear unable to care for myself?" I asked, finding strange calm in finally seeing the truth plainly. "To create symptoms that would support moving me to assisted living so you could sell my home?" "It wasn't that dramatic," she countered, attempting to minimize what we all recognized as methodical and dangerous. "Just enough to show you needed more support than this old house could provide. It would have been better for everyone, you included." Michael, who had been texting while this exchange occurred, looked up from his phone. "I've consulted with hospital legal services. What you've done constitutes elder abuse and potentially attempted medical harm. They're advising us to contact law enforcement immediately." For the first time, genuine alarm broke through Jennifer's composed exterior. The potential legal consequences of her actions clearly hadn't factored into her planning, or perhaps she had assumed family loyalty would prevent formal action regardless of what was discovered. "You would report your own sister to the police?" she asked, disbelief evident in her voice. "Over some mixed-up pills?" "This wasn't confusion or mistake," Sophia responded, her normally gentle voice firm with certainty. "These medications were deliberately substituted in a pattern that would create specific symptoms. As healthcare professionals, we're mandatory reporters of elder abuse. This qualifies without question. As this confrontation unfolded in my kitchen, I felt strange detachment, as if observing a scene involving strangers rather than my own children. The daughter I had raised had become someone calculating enough to endanger my health for financial gain. The daughter-in-law, who had once been a polite addition to family gatherings, had become a fierce protector with moral clarity I found myself profoundly grateful for. When the police officers arrived 40 minutes later, they took statements with professional efficiency. The medications were documented, photographs taken, and Jennifer was asked to remain available for further questioning. No dramatic arrest occurred, just the methodical groundwork for what would likely become a formal investigation. After they departed, Jennifer made one final attempt to reframe the situation. "This is being blown completely out of proportion," she insisted. "I was trying to help, and now I'm being treated like a criminal in my own mother's house." "That's exactly the problem," I replied, finding strength I hadn't known I possessed. "You've been seeing this as your house waiting to be claimed rather than my home where I'm still living. Every action you've taken has prioritized the property's value over my well-being in it." As evening approached, Michael and Sophia helped Jennifer gather her belongings. No dramatic confrontation marked her departure, just the quiet closing of a chapter in our family story. Michael arranged for a patrol car to drive past the house periodically over the coming weeks, a precaution that seemed sadly necessary given what we had discovered. That night, as I prepared for bed in the home that had nearly been taken from me through calculated deception, I found myself reflecting on my grandmother's wisdom about crisis revealing true character. The pneumonia that had seemed like unfortunate timing had actually provided protection, creating circumstances that exposed intentions before they could be fully implemented. In the guest room across the hall, I could hear Sophia quietly organizing my correct medications for the following day. Her presence represented everything Jennifer's calculated attention had falsely presented: genuine concern without expectation of return, support without hidden agenda, family loyalty in its truest form. The choice I had made in that hospital room, changing my will before even being discharged, had been instinctive rather than calculated. Now, with evidence of what might have happened had I not acted, the decision seemed less like emotional response to disappointment and more like necessary protection against carefully planned exploitation. As I drifted toward sleep in the bedroom, where 3 generations of my family had slept before me, I felt profound gratitude for the unexpected protection that illness had paradoxically provided, revealing truths that might otherwise have remained hidden until it was too late to preserve what mattered most. 6 months after discovering Jennifer's medication tampering, I sat in the sunroom of my Victorian home reviewing documents spread across the antique table that had witnessed 4 generations of family discussions. The legal papers before me represented both conclusion and beginning, the formal resolution of one chapter in our family story, and the foundation for what would follow. The investigation into Jennifer's actions had progressed with methodical thoroughness rather than dramatic confrontation. The detective assigned to the case, a compassionate woman in her 50s named Elena Ramirez, had approached the situation with sensitivity appropriate to family complexity, while maintaining professional clarity about the seriousness of the offenses. Elder abuse cases often involve complicated emotions that simple criminal frameworks don't fully address, she had explained during our initial interview. The relationship between victim and perpetrator creates layers that require careful navigation. Her description of me as victim had initially felt strange. The term seemed to suggest helplessness that didn't align with my self-perception. Yet, as the investigation progressed, I had come to understand that recognizing victimization didn't diminish personal agency or strength. It simply acknowledged that someone had violated normal expectations of care and trust in ways that society had rightfully criminalized. The prosecutor had ultimately offered Jennifer a plea arrangement that reflected both the seriousness of her actions and the complications of family context. Rather than facing potential imprisonment that more aggressive charges might have carried, she accepted an agreement that included 3 years of supervised probation, mandatory financial management counseling, restitution for medical expenses resulting from the medication tampering, a restraining order preventing unauthorized contact, community service with organizations serving elderly populations. The consequences seemed appropriately balanced, substantial, enough to reflect the gravity of endangering an elderly parent's health for financial gain, yet structured toward rehabilitation rather than purely punitive outcomes. More difficult than the legal resolution had been the emotional reckoning within. Our extended family, Jennifer's husband David, had initially defended her actions, suggesting maternal melodrama had transformed simple medication confusion into exaggerated accusations. When presented with the pharmacy evidence showing deliberate acquisition of multiple prescription medications from scattered locations, his defensive posture had collapsed into shocked recognition. "I knew we were having financial difficulties," he admitted during a difficult conversation with Michael. "But I had no idea she would consider something like this. The Jennifer I thought I knew would never." His voice had trailed off, unable to complete the thought that would acknowledge the fundamental reshaping of his understanding of his wife's character. Their marriage had not survived the revelation. The divorce proceedings had added another layer of complexity to Jennifer's situation, with David seeking primary custody of their children based on concerning judgment and behavior patterns. My grandchildren, ages 12 and 9, had been shielded from the explicit details of their mother's actions, though they understood that something serious had occurred requiring their parents' separation and their mother's regular meetings with court officials. Maintaining my relationship with these innocent children had required careful navigation. I had worked with a family therapist to develop appropriate explanations that neither demonized their mother nor minimized the gravity of broken trust between adults. Our monthly visits continued, structured around positive activities that built our relationship independent of the complicated dynamics between their parents and me. "Grandma, are you still mad at Mom?" my 9-year-old grandson had asked during our most recent visit, his perceptiveness catching me off guard. The question deserved honest response without burdening him with adult complexities. "I'm sad about choices that were made," I had answered, carefully. "But that has nothing to do with how much I love you and your sister. Some things between grown-ups take time to heal, but my heart is never closed to you." This balance, honoring children's need for truth while protecting them from details beyond their capacity to process, represented one of the most challenging aspects of our family's reconstruction after Jennifer's actions had shattered previous assumptions about relationships and trust. Michael and Sophia had been my anchors throughout this difficult period. Their steady presence and practical support had created foundation for recovery that transcended the physical assistance required during my initial convalescence from pneumonia. Most remarkably, Sophia had discovered renewed purpose through our family crisis. Her experiences advocating for me in the hospital and subsequently navigating the elder protection system had inspired her to shift her nursing career toward elder advocacy. She had enrolled in a certification program in geriatric care management, positioning herself to help other families navigate the complex terrain of aging parents, medical systems, and protection against exploitation. "Your situation made me realize how vulnerable even the most independent seniors become during health crises," she explained as her new career path took shape. "Most families lack the medical background to recognize when something isn't right. I can bridge that gap." Watching her transform our family's painful experience into protection for others provided unexpected meaning from circumstances I would never have chosen, but now recognized had created possibility for growth, not despite difficulty but through it. The physical home that had been the focal point of Jennifer's exploitation attempts had taken on renewed significance through these developments. Rather than representing just my personal history and comfort, it had evolved into dynamic center for family continuity and community contribution. The living room that had witnessed tense confrontations 6 months earlier now hosted monthly educational sessions where Sophia shared insights about elder care with community members navigating similar challenges. Michael had converted the rarely used formal dining room into meaningful space for medical students from disadvantaged backgrounds to receive mentoring and support during their education. My role had evolved as well. Rather than defining myself primarily as victim of exploitation or passive recipient of protection, I had discovered capacity for contributing to prevention efforts that might protect others from similar experiences. Your willingness to share. Your story provides the foundation for our protection initiatives, Elena had noted during a community education session we had developed together. Statistics don't change behaviors, but personal narratives create recognition and motivation that abstract warnings never achieve. The experience of speaking openly about what had happened, first with law enforcement, then with carefully selected community groups, had transformed isolation into connection. Each time I shared elements of our family's experience, other seniors would approach afterward with whispered accounts of concerning behaviors from family members they had been reluctant to acknowledge or address. I've been afraid to question my son's financial management, one woman confided after a presentation. But hearing your experience helped me recognize patterns I've been trying to ignore. These connections had created unexpected community of support extending beyond my immediate family, relationships built on shared experiences and mutual understanding rather than geographic proximity or long-standing history. The network developing through these interactions provided both practical protection and emotional sustenance during a period of family reconstruction that might otherwise have been defined by isolation and loss. The documents before me on the sunroom table represented the final structural adjustments to family arrangements following everything that had occurred. My attorney had worked with expert colleagues to develop comprehensive protection measures that balanced several crucial considerations: ongoing security,